We're back with more of the BS Show, and ordinarily on Monday, Jeff O'Brien and I, attorney Jeff O'Brien and I, do a 3 and out, 3 sports stories, and usually they're local sports stories, but today we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to talk about Minnesota icon, legend, put whatever word you want on our qualifier, Prince. And what we're going to talk about is, because Jeff is an attorney, he works with a lot of businesses, it's the fact that Prince, he really thought contracts were immoral? And that's why he didn't have a will or anything to set up what would happen if he were to die? Or do you think, like Michael Jackson, he'd live forever?
No, it's funny, Bob. I'm glad we're talking about this topic. And it came up because I have an article that's in the Wisconsin Lawyer magazine this month about this. And yeah, the subject of his views on contract law came up first when he had his first marriage annulled, and this is in the wake of his fight with Warner Brothers, his first record label, over the timing of releasing new material. He wanted to just keep releasing stuff all the time, and they said, "Hey, pump the brakes. We can't keep up with promoting all this stuff." And he makes the comment during the story about the marriage being annulled that he thinks that contracts are immoral. And you remember, this is when he was putting slave on his face, and it was all this kind of stuff. And it got to the point where with his, he did have an autobiography that he was working on at the time of his death, and it was published, called The Beautiful Ones. They published as much as they had from him, but then his co-author sort of kind of told the rest of the story, and they put some other stuff in it. But I found out that he gave his attorney a power of attorney to sign the contract for the book. He wouldn't even sign the book contract.
So is that the only thing he gave power of attorney to his attorney to, not for any of the stuff that became an issue afterward?
I think it was just a power of attorney simply to handle that contract, but he wouldn't sign it himself. But and so, the only logical thing I can think of as to why someone with his size of estate, knowing that he had this huge trove of intellectual property being this vault, and there was a vault at Paisley Park. At a previous law firm, one of my partners was involved with the estate early on, and he was there the day when they drilled out the lock and opened up this bank vault, which had all the unreleased audio and video stuff in it. And you would have thought that he would have had whether he was, I don't know if he was, never was advised about it, or if he just, was such a.
Well, it sounds like he would have because ignored it.
I'm guessing that nobody brought it up for fear of being fired.
Oh, that could be. Now, okay, I got a couple of questions. One, he had a sign over power of attorney, but he'd sign that, but he wouldn't sign the contract.
Right.
Ironic.
Yeah, I know.
Or weird, or hypocritical.
It wasn't that he was opposed to lawyers, because he was always having to bring cease and desist demands against everybody for everything. You remember the famous story with the woman who videotaped her young daughter dancing to "Let's Go Crazy," and they posted on YouTube, and she got a cease and desist letter from Prince's lawyers. Wow. So it wasn't that he was against lawyers; he just, for whatever reason. And the other thing too, Bob, is sometimes, a lot in my practice, a lot of times what gets people to put together an estate plan is somebody close to them passes away, and you start to think about your own mortality.
And he never did.
If you go back towards the end of right at the end of his life, when he was doing this piano and a microphone tour, remember, one of his past proteges' romantic relationships was a woman named Denise Richards, who went under the name Vanity, and he would talk about her and she had passed away just shortly before he did, and he would talk about her and her death during these very intimate shows, and you would have thought, boy, somebody that you were close to at one time passes away, you would have at least thought about it. And so that was a little bit odd too, that he just apparently didn't. I don't know. You're right. It could have been that he didn't think about it. Didn't think he thought he was going to live forever, or what it was. But didn't take any steps, and as the result has been a real mess.
Well, you hear some people say, "I don't care. I'll be dead." Do you think that could have been it? He just didn't care. But where is it now? Who is controlling his estate? One of his siblings?
So the siblings, half siblings, there's 2 different LLCs that are involved with this in terms of releasing anything, any new material from his from his vault, and they have to all agree. And one of the LLCs has some of his former managers and lawyers kind of managing it.
So they were hired, but were they hired by the family? Somebody had to tell them they should do it.
They were hired by some of the siblings, and then the siblings took them to court claiming they were trying to take it over, and so that got resolved. And now anything has to be approved by these two groups to be officially released. And as a result, there was talk at one point that there was enough material in this vault to do an album a year for 200 years.
Oh my God!
10 years later, there's been 11 releases.
Holy cow! So he's worth more money now, right? Dead than alive?
I'm sorry, what?
Is he like Elvis, worth more dead than alive?
It's just I don't think it's worth more dead than alive, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Live performances. There has been a good chunk, to the estate's credit or to these parties' credit. There has been a lot of the unreleased stuff released. They've done deluxe releases of some of the big albums, and they've put a lot of the demos and things like that with them.
Okay.
So you can hear kind of what didn't make the albums. But, if you're a diehard enough fan like I am, let's just say you're aware of the trading circles and you're aware of the circulation of bootleg material, you read about it, there's more out there. And it's just been kind of surprising how little of it has actually been released.
So, okay, now, Paisley Park, does it exist, or has it been turned into like office space? What is it? Is there a shrine to him?
It's funny you mentioned Elvis, Bob. It's now a museum, and it's actually run. I think it's still the case. Early on, it was run by the same folks that run Graceland for Elvis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting that they hired that group. Well, it makes sense. They've made a lot of money for the Presley family. How many siblings were there, or are there?
So there was one, actual sibling.
Full sibling.
There was 4 half siblings.
Did they have a claim to it too, or did the full sibling have a bigger claim?
No, it ended up being the full sibling plus the half siblings that got his estate.
Well, that I see. I don't remember all this. That went through litigation, though, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure they were suing each other.
And they also had a fight with the IRS because, again, he does no estate planning, doesn't do any sort of tax planning around this valuable estate with property and intellectual property. And they had to pay, I think it was about a $56 million estate tax bill that they had to pay.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they're doing okay now because the money is just rolling in.
Yeah, they've done well. Certainly there was a lot of the stuff that he had released on his own that's now been re-released, especially with, vinyl records coming back. A lot of people buying that kind of stuff up. There's a lot of stuff, though, that's proliferated that I think that the estate doesn't get anything from. And that was, if you remember, right after this death, there was a push for this thing called the Prince Act, where they were going to, basically the Minnesota legislature was going to put a law in place that would have allowed the family to police the exploitation of Prince's name and likeness, much in the way that he did during his lifetime, and that ended up being shelved. They didn't. They said that there were going to be unintended consequences for if they were to go through with this, just especially because of Prince.
Now did he copyright the name Prince, because he did become the. What was that? What did he call himself? The artist formerly known as Prince?
He was the artist formerly known as Prince. He had the symbol for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, his actual name is Prince Rogers Nelson. He just shortened
to Prince.
He didn't use the rest of the.
See, I wonder if he could not. Maybe he didn't want to sign, because for a while he would have had to made the emblem, and he couldn't duplicate it the way it should look.
I don't know, but yeah, that was part of it. At that point, that's when, and then he went back to the name, and he claimed that the reason he did it, the whole thing, was because of his publishing contract, and that had expired now, so he could use his name again. It was just kind of bizarre.
What did because you did a lot of research on this, and you certainly, like you said, were a fan. He doesn't strike me as someone who didn't know what he was doing. I think he knew intentionally what he was doing here, but was he generally considered a smart business,man or smart guy? It sounds like he was.
He was always kind of very innovative and ahead of his time. He was doing internet releases long before there was iTunes and Napster and stuff like that. I think that the other theory, the only other working theory I have besides just not wanting to because to sign any of these legal documents, dealing this, maybe he did have a problem treating his his art as assets. But there's a comment he made that it's referenced in the book, that is with his co-authors, talking about his experiences being out there with Paisley Park with him, and he made a reference to the vault material as being stuff that was incomplete. And there was a song particularly that he reworked. It was re-recorded around the 1999 album. He finally released it on an album just before he died. So that's a long time for him to be playing with it. So the only other theory that I have, Bob, is maybe he created a mess deliberately so that stuff wouldn't get out because he didn't think it was completed.
Oh, well, now the stuff that has come out, has it been well received?
Yes.
Oh,
And I think it helps kind of frame his musical legacy. And that was kind of the point of the article too, is the inability to his refusal or unwillingness to have an estate plan or have a plan for releasing this stuff, I think has impacted his legacy a bit, because there are things, he was legendary for these after shows where he'd do a show and then he'd show up at some, Paisley Park or a club at like 1-2 in the morning and just go for, nonstop. And there's a lot of stuff that, that's available, particularly in the live side. And there's still some unreleased stuff too. But I think that would help kind of, fill in the lines that kind of round some of his legend. Because, all of us that lived through it, we remember it, but 100 years from now, who knows what they're gonna, what's gonna be remembered.
You wonder.
And I think it would help frame his legacy more if more of this stuff was out there.
It's fascinating. Now, Jeff, can people find it online to read this piece you did for Wisconsin Lawyer?
Yeah. So it's online. There's a website for the state bar. There's a website for the Wisconsin Lawyer. But if you go over to my bio page on our firm website, which is Husch Blackwell, HUSCH Blackwell.com, and look up me, there is a link there to all my various articles and stuff. Terrific. Like that. And I know that they did put a link to that article on there. So it is on there, and I've got it on if anybody's following me on social media, it's out there. I put it across X and LinkedIn and Facebook too. But if you do go to either the Wisconsin Lawyer magazine website or our firm website in my bio, and it's linked there.
Terrific, Jeff. Thank you so much, Jeff O'Brien, attorney Jeff O'Brien. Check that. It's an essay, you're calling it, right? Article, essay. What do you call it?
It's just an article.
All right.
Just for I did it. It's kind of, we released it this month because it was in honor of kind of the 10th anniversary of his passing.
10 years already. All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much. We'll take a quick break. The BS Show will be right back.